Microhistories of the Mundane. Why you never survived the plague. Tudor plague doctors to medieval seamstresses. Hey there. Tonight, we're stepping into the reeking alleys of Tudor London, and not the Hollywood gloss, but the cold, heavy truth under the brim of a plague doctor's leather beak. You won't find clean heroes. No grand speeches or shining myths. Just the stench of rot, the buzz of flies, the sting of vinegar-soaked cloth, fog swirling through empty marketplaces, boots crunching over ash and lime. A handful of masked physicians, herbal peddlers, and terrified townsfolk hardened by sickness. Smoke and the slow collapse of the world they knew? If this kind of storytelling helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe if it brings you even a sliver of peace. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love knowing who else is drifting off to the slow march through history. Thank you for spending your evening with me. Come back tomorrow for more echoes from forgotten professions, hidden corners, and the strange grime of everyday survival. Now, dim the lights. Let the creak of doors, the rasp of cloth, the hollow echo of boots in a plague-stricken street warm your mind. Settle in, and let's begin with the strange, sour-scented world of the Tudor plague doctor. Blood and bottle, a day in the life of a Tudor plague doctor, the suit that smelled of death. You don't put it on quickly. The suit begins with linen, 2 layers of it, tightly wrapped around the body one to soak up the sweat. The others serve as a final sacrificial barrier if things go wrong. The outer layers sometimes rubbed wax or soaked in vinegar, if you can afford it, or if you believe it helps. Most plague doctors didn't have that luxury. Many didn't survive long enough to care. Next comes the long coat, thick oiled leather that covers from throat to shin. It's stiff as bark and heavier than it looks. Stitched by candlelight, likely by a tailor who didn't ask too many questions. It carries the scent of last week's vinegar and last month's blood. There's stains you don't talk about. They're not all from the patients. Gloves are drawn on tight. Goat leather, if you're lucky. Pigskin, if you're not. They creak when you flex your fingers, and you'll spend much of your day flexing, writing, lifting, pushing away. The boots are tall, reaching nearly to the knee. Muddy streets don't just hold water, they hold runoff, human waste, decay. You don't step in a puddle here, you step into a slow rot that soaks through even the best stitching. That's what the boots are for. That and keeping the rats at bay. But it's the mask that makes it real, the infamous beak. It's not meant to frighten, though it does. It's meant to filter. You stuff it full of herbs, lavender, mint, camphor, myrrh, rose petals, cinnamon bark, whatever's strong, sharp, or sacred. Anything to keep the miasma out. Anything to drown out the smell of what's already inside. The glass eyepieces fog when you breathe. The world becomes warped, like staring through wet church windows. Shadows lengthen in odd directions. Faces twist. Details blur. In the streets, they stare at you like you're death himself because, for many, you are the last face they'll ever see. You stop being a man. You become a symbol of disease, of fear, of futile hope. There's a staff in your hand, not for walking, for pointing, for prodding, for keeping distance. You don't touch the sick, not directly. You move limbs with your cane. You push open doors with it. You lift cloaks, inspect boils, swat rats. Sometimes you knock. Sometimes you tap the ground as you walk, part rhythm, part warning. The doctor's coming. The doctor is near. Your breath grows stale inside the mask. It's warm in there. Close. The scent of herbs mixes with sweat, and over time it becomes something else. Something sour. Boy. You learn to breathe shallowly to avoid drawing in too much of the humid air trapped around your face. You become used to it. You have to. The world outside the beak is muffled. Shouts are dull thuds. Cries are whispers. Doors slam without echo. The constant sound is your own breath, slow and rhythmic, like waves on a sickly shore. You can't scratch your nose, can't rub your eyes. You feel an itch under your collarbone, and it burns because you know you can't do anything about it. You become hyper-aware of your own body, the heat building beneath the coat, the sweat pooling behind your knees, the pressure of the straps digging into your shoulders. This isn't armor, it's surrender. A uniform not of power, but of grim routine. Sometimes people cross themselves when they see you. Other times, they spit. You learn to walk slowly, calmly. You become something between priest and undertaker, a figure of dread and necessity. No one invites you in with joy. No one greets you as a friend. But still you dress. Every morning, you go through the ritual. Each layer is another step toward becoming something less human and more symbolic. You dress not to protect yourself, though you hope it does, but to play your part, to give structure to a world unraveling. And you hope, above all else, that today the suit works. Waking in fear, a doctor's home life, he wakes before the sun. Not because he wants to. Because sleep doesn't linger in plague time. It flits in and out like a thief, stealing rest, but leaving the fatigue behind. The mattress is straw, flattened, and stained, its stuffing constantly poking through. There's a basin of cloudy water by the bed yesterday's wash, now still and cold. A rat scurries beneath the floorboards. He listens. He knows the rhythm now. Rat, creak, drip, breath. The room is not luxurious. A single candle stump sits in a chipped pewter holder, used down to a nub. The flame flickers when he lights it, casting long shadows on walls that haven't been scrubbed in weeks. Or months. He keeps to one room, mostly. The rest of the house feels too empty. Too wide, too haunted. There's a coat hanging on a nail by the door, his real coat, the one he wears when he's not dressed like death. It smells faintly of ink and herbs, but mostly of sweat and time. He doesn't wear it much these days. Most days, he wears leather. He moves through the morning slowly, purposefully, quietly. He avoids sudden noises, more for his own nerves than anyone else's. There's a ritual in the quiet checking the pouch of dried herbs. Sharpening the quill, he carries in his coat, preparing the ink, replacing the wax tablet he uses for field notes. He writes everything down, not because it helps the dying, but because someone someday might learn something from it. In the corner of the room, a ledger sits open, pages filled with dates, names, symptoms, final notes. Many just black lines now, crossing out the names. Easier than writing died. He doesn't eat much in the morning. Bread, if it hasn't gone stale. Maybe a hard pear. Meat is rare these days. So is milk. So is appetite. Hunger feels like a luxury. A sign of someone untouched by the air outside. Someone safe. He eats only to keep from fainting on the job. That's happened once. He doesn't want it to happen again. There's a bucket in the corner for washing. He pours water into a smaller bowl, dips a cloth in, and wipes his face. The chill is shocking, but grounding. He doesn't scrub too hard. It's not worth the risk of breaking the skin. Infection starts small. A cut. A scrape. A weakness. Afterward, he picks up the small tin of vinegar and dabs it on his neck and temples. The smell bites his nose. It lingers in his sinuses. He'll carry all day. It's supposed to protect him. Maybe it does. Maybe it just makes the air seem cleaner than it is. Sometimes he stands by the window. He never opens it. He watches the street below silent at this hour, save for the occasional dog or drunk. The city still sleeps. The sickness does not. Somewhere nearby, someone is coughing. Someone is already dying. They just haven't realized it yet. He keeps a book on the sill. A small, battered volume of Galen's writings. Misguided, perhaps, but it comforts him. Not the medicine, but the effort. The belief that reason might triumph over the stench of panic. He reads a few lines each morning. Something to put a fence around the madness. There's a letter on the table, unopened. From his sister, he thinks he hasn't had the courage to read it. Not yet. Letters bring news. News brings change. And lately, change has only meant more names to write in the ledger. He dresses slowly. First, the inner garments, linen, worn and patched. Then the boots, then the heavy coat. He waits until the last moment to put on the mask. He doesn't want to feel it before he has to. But before all of that, he pauses. Just for a moment. In the corner of the room is a small carved crucifix. He's not especially devout. But in these times, Most people become something close to religious, if not in practice, then in superstition. He presses 2 fingers to the wood, not quite a prayer. More like a truce, a moment of stillness before descending into the noise. He gathers his tools, the cane, the pouch of herbs, the wax-sealed salve jars, the tablet, the ink, and places them in a small satchel by the door. He checks it 3 times. He always checks it 3 times. He opens the door. The morning air hits like a damp cloth to the face. Cold, rank, heavy with the smell of wood smoke, damp earth, and something he can't quite name, something metallic and sweet. Death in the distance. He steps outside. And behind him, the candle flickers out. On the streets, bellmen, corpses, and lime, the city is not silent. It only pretends to be. In the early hours, when the sky is a sullen gray and the fog clings to doorsteps like guilt, there's a quiet that feels rehearsed. Windows shuttered. Streets empty. But behind every wall, someone is coughing. Someone is whispering. Someone is waiting for the bellman to come. The plague bell rings like an accusation. Bring out your dead? It's not always shouted. Sometimes it's muttered. Sometimes the words aren't said at all, just the bell swung from a gloved hand. Its clang echoing through alleys where children once played. You hear it long before you see him. The bellman comes first, and always alone. His job is to walk ahead of the body carts, warning the living to clear the way. You keep your distance from the bellman. He walks in a haze of infection, maybe real, maybe imagined. He wears no beak, no leather, no pretense of medicine. Just a scarf across his mouth and gloves on his hands. Some call him brave. Others call him doomed. No one calls him twice. The plague doctor follows behind, slowly, purposefully. He doesn't call out. He doesn't explain himself. The costume does that. The mask, the cane, the glint of glass eyes, and the reek of herbs. It all says what needs to be said. Something is wrong in this house. Children stare. Mothers pull them back inside. He knocks with the end of the staff. 3 times. Always 3. It's not law, just habit. Ritual becomes protection. When there's no cure, there is only rhythm. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. Knock. Sometimes the door opens. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes he must push it in with the tip of his cane and step over the threshold into a room filled with too many still figures. Too few breaths. A child in a corner, hiding behind a cupboard. A man slumped in a chair, a rosary tangled in his fingers. A woman lying in bed, motionless until her eyes snap open, bloodshot and wild. He cannot save them. That's not what he's here to do. He inspects. He records. He burns incense, sprinkles herbs, says things that sound official but are mostly whispered habits. He smears a salve beneath the mask to dull the scent of death. He checks the pits of the arms, the swellings of the neck, the color of the lips. He writes down names. Or descriptions, if the names are gone. Old man, graying 2 lesions. Confused. Alone. Girl, unresponsive. Rash spread to abdomen. No family present. Mother and 2 children. 3rd child missing. Then comes the quick ritual of lime. If the body is freshly dead or dying, he instructs those present, if any remain, to cover the corpse in linen, seal the room, and dust the body with quicklime. It's supposed to purify. It rarely does, but it keeps the flies down, and that at least feels like something. Sometimes he leaves a small bag of herbs by the bedside, not as a cure, as a comfort. The street itself is no cleaner. Refuse lines the gutters. Rats dart between doorsteps like messengers of fate. Dogs howl in the distance, not for food, but from confusion. Everything they know is changing. Even the smells have changed. A few blocks away, the corpse cart rolls forward. It's pulled by 1 man, sometimes 2. The horse, if there is one, wears a rough sack over its face. The men don't look at the bodies. They just lift them, sling them, stack them. Linen-wrapped, when possible. Naked, when not. Sometimes they groan under the weight of 3, 4, 5 corpses at once. There is no reverence left. No dignity. The doctor nods at them as he passes. They do not nod back. The carts go to the pits. dug hastily in the night. Some marked. Most not. There's no time for graves, no time for names. Just holes in the ground, lime and silence. On the way to the next house, a woman calls out from a window. Sir, please? He's still breathing. The doctor doesn't respond right away. He's learned not to move quickly, not to promise, not to raise hope where there's only a delay in dying. But he turns, nods, follows the sound. Inside the house, the smell is stronger. Sweat, rot, spoiled meat, old bread. He breathes shallowly and enters. A boy lies on a cot, shaking. His skin is gray-green, his lips cracked. His eyes flutter open and shut like broken shutters in a storm. The mother stands behind him, hands trembling. Can he save him? The doctor reaches for his wax tablet. I can write his name. Outside, the bell rings again. Somewhere else, another door opens. Somewhere else, another door closes for the last time. And the doctor moves on. Diagnosing the damned, leeches, boils, and bile. The sick come in waves. Sometimes they're brought in on stretchers. Sometimes they walk in under their own power wide-eyed, swaying, dragging a foot that's started to swell. Sometimes they don't make it past the threshold. The diagnosis doesn't begin with medicine. It begins with smell. The plague has a scent, not just the scent of death, though that hangs thickly enough. It's a mix of sweat rot, unwashed cloth, and something sharper like metal and mushrooms and meat left in the sun. The doctor learns it. Learns to recognize it before the symptoms speak. Learns to brace for it like a slap. Then come the questions. How long has it been? Have the buboes formed? Is there blood in the sputum? Answers are often confused. The fever scrambles minds. Fear muddies memory. The doctor listens, nods, scribbles. He leans in close, but not too close. Through the glass eyes of the mask, the patient looks like a ghost already. Pale skin, dark sweat, trembling lips. He uses the cane to lift the blanket, to point at the groin, the armpits, the neck. These are the places where the swellings rise boils the size of plums, purple, black, and pulsing with heat. They stink. Sometimes they weep pus. Sometimes they burst on their own. Sometimes the skin around them turns hard and red, like burned leather. These are the buboes, the signature of the Black Death. He does not touch them directly. He gestures. He instructs the family to uncover the wounds if they haven't already crusted over. He watches, records. Sometimes he smells the boil. He says it's to judge the infection. Really, it's to confirm what he already knows. There are treatments of a kind. Bloodletting is the first, always the first. A small cut in the arm, near the elbow, a bowl to catch the blood. Sometimes a leech, if the veins are too deep or the skin too cold. The doctor watches the leech swell with stolen blood, then plucks it off with the cane and drops it into a jar of vinegar. The theory is this: the blood is bad, tainted, thick with corruption. Letting it out makes room for new, clean blood to form. It's not true, but it's something to do. If the patient survives the bloodletting, the doctor moves to the next tool in his useless arsenal. Poultices made of onions, butter, and herbs, pressed against the buboes, sometimes with garlic, sometimes with pig fat. He binds them with strips of linen and instructs the family to change the dressing twice a day, assuming the patient lived that long. Then comes the urine. He inspects it by candlelight, holds the chamber pot up, sloshes it gently, watches the light play through the liquid. He notes the color, the cloudiness. The sediment. Brown is bad. Red is worse. Clear is either good or a sign the kidneys have given up. He doesn't always understand what he's seeing. No one does. But writing it down makes it seem official. And in times like these, that illusion is all anyone has. Some ask about charms. The doctor is not a priest. He makes that clear. But he carries a few scraps in his pouch, small tokens blessed by a friar, or inscribed with Latin that only half makes sense. He doesn't believe they work, but he knows belief is medicine, too. Others ask about purging. He has powders, bitter, dusty things made of dried rhubarb or antimony. He mixes them with water and hands them over. The sick drink. They vomit. They cry. Sometimes they stop breathing. Sometimes they get better. No one knows why. Occasionally, he's asked to lance a bubo. It's a brutal task. He doesn't do it lightly. A small knife, sterilized in flame, or what passes for sterilized. A quick slice, a gush of foul-smelling pus. A scream that echoes down the hall. He presses a cloth to the wound, wraps it tight, and steps back. The room always goes quiet after that. The patient, if conscious, stares at him like he's something ancient. Something sent from another world. And in a way he doesn't come with a cure. He comes with a record. He's not there to heal. He's there to observe the dying slowly, carefully, and with a pen. And when there's nothing else to try, he simply sits. Sometimes that's all a doctor can offer. A presence. A breath behind a mask. A shadow in the corner as the patient whispers prayers or curses or last words that no one else is brave enough to hear. When it's over, he stands. He makes a note. He nods to the family or the empty room, and he walks back into the streets. After the rounds, prayers, pouches, and burned clothes, the streets grow quieter as the sun begins to fall. Not because the plague has paused, it never does, but because exhaustion has settled over the city like soot. The bells stop ringing for a few hours. The carts return to their barns. The moans grow softer behind closed shutters. People retreat, even from fear. The doctor walks back through alleys smeared with filth and fading footprints. He's heavier now. Not just from the sweat pooled in his boots or the dried blood on his gloves, but from the weight of the names he's carried all day. Names of the dying. Names of the dead. Names of the ones who asked if they were next. He tries not to remember them. He writes them down so he doesn't have to. When he returns home, the door closes behind him with a sound that feels final. He stands in the entryway, still masked, still coated. He doesn't sit down, he doesn't speak. He goes to the corner of the room where a copper basin waits, already filled with vinegar and water, and begins the slow process of undracing. The gloves come first. Peeled off, turned inside out, dropped into the basin. Then the coat heavy and stiff, it creaks as it bends. It takes effort. The leather sticks to his shirt beneath, the lining damp with sweat. He drops it carefully over a second basin, one reserved for burning or boiling. There is no cleaning some things. The boots are next, caked with something he doesn't want to identify. They, too, go into the discard pile. The mask is last. He unfastens the straps, and for a moment, his breath quickens. The room feels bigger without the walls of the beak. Colder, too. The scent of herbs that once filled his nose is gone, replaced by the vinegar air of his own home. He sets the mask on the windowsill, lets it stare out into the dark like a hollow sentinel, then he washes, not casually, not with splashes. He scrubs, arms, legs, chest, face over and over. The vinegar stings his skin, already raw from repetition. He dries with a cloth that he immediately places into another basin, one for burning. There are no second uses here, not anymore. When he's clean, or as clean as he can manage, he dresses in a simple robe and sits by the candle, back straight, eyes unfocused. He opens the ledger. More names, more notes. A small X beside those who didn't make it past sundown. He doesn't write died. Just the X, it says everything it needs to. He flips back a few pages, tries to find patterns, symptoms that look familiar, treatments that may have helped. He doesn't always believe what he writes, but he writes it anyway, because someone might read it someday after all of this is over. If anything ever truly is. There's a pouch on the table. Inside are the tokens he carries, dried herbs, a fragment of saint's bone wrapped in linen, a ring with Latin inscriptions too worn to read. Superstitions, mostly. But tonight he takes one out, a small carved charm, gifted by a child weeks ago. He runs his fingers over its surface. The child is gone now. But the charm remains. He lights another candle. Opens a book. Not for medicine, he's had enough of that. Just a story. A prayer. A distraction. The night stretches long. Sometimes he dreams of fire. Not the hellish kind. The kind that comes from burning the clothes, the linens, the masks. A purging fire. Cleansing through destruction. Outside, someone's probably lighting a pile right now, tossing in garments that touch the bed. Maybe a chair that held the sick, maybe a mattress that won't stop smelling of fever. Burning isn't just disposal, it's therapy. The only guarantee the plague can't come back from, the doctor understands. He does it too, regularly, quietly. In a pit behind the house, hidden behind a broken fence. No one watches. No one speaks of it. But the fire speaks enough. He returns to bed late. The room still smells of vinegar and candle wax. He lies down on the same mattress, listens again for the rat beneath the floorboards. Hears nothing tonight. He closes his eyes. Tries not to think of the boils, the blood, the quiet screams. He focuses on the breath, the same breath that fogs the inside of his mask day after day. He tells himself it's getting better. He doesn't believe it. But he says it anyway. Cauldrons and curses. Inside a medieval alchemy class, the apprentice arrives. It begins with a smell. Not incense. Not wood smoke. Something sharper, stranger, like hot iron and crushed herbs soaked in wine. The scent clings to the air like a secret. The apprentice stands outside the workshop door, clutching a letter sealed in red wax, and wondering if this was a mistake. The house is older than memory stone walls, slick with moss. A crooked chimney leaning like it's whispering secrets to the sky. Windows are dark, curtains drawn. Somewhere inside, something bubbles. He knocks once, then again. Then the door creaks open by itself. He steps inside. The room is dim, lit only by the glow of coals in a brick hearth and 3 candles melted into a puddle of wax on a long warped workbench. Shelves line the walls, crowded with glass jars, copper instruments, cracked bones, and rolled scrolls bound in twine. A dried bat hangs from a nail. A jar labeled Tears of a Monk is filled with a cloudy yellowish fluid. A human skull wears a scrap of velvet like a crown. The master is nowhere to be seen. But a voice cuts through the gloom. You're late. The apprentice jumps. He didn't see the figure in the corner. A man, or what appears to be one, sits hunched beneath layers of wool and stained velvet, one eye covered by a monocle the size of a saucer. His hands are stained black at the fingertips, and he's grinding something reddish into a mortar with deliberate, circular strokes. Your name, the master mutters, not looking up. The apprentice answers, stammers it, actually. The master grunts. You'll sleep in the loft. You'll wash the alembics every morning. You'll sort the leeches from the frogs before noon. You'll not touch the cinnabar without gloves. You'll lose your eyebrows once, hopefully only once. And you'll never, under any circumstance, ask if I can turn lead into gold. The apprentice nods. The master stops grinding and fixes him with one eye, glowing faintly in the candlelight. Because I can't, he says. And because I've already tried. Training begins that night. No rest, no unpacking. Just an apron, a lantern, and a broom made from bundled brambles. The floor is swept in circular patterns, not for cleanliness, but for containment. The master explains dryly that spilled mercury tends to wander. The apprentice doesn't ask what that means. Instead, he sweeps carefully, watching the glass tubes on the shelves rattle when he gets too close. Some are sealed with wax, others with cloth. One is corked with what looks like human skin. There's a cage in the corner covered with a cloth. It moves occasionally. He doesn't ask. The lesson continues. This is a crucible. You heat things in it until they surrender. Just like people. This is an athanor. It keeps a steady flame, the kind your nerves lack. This is quicksilver. It will kill you slowly. So will I, if you drop it? The apprentice takes notes in a leather-bound book provided by the master. The ink smells metallic. The quill is from a blackbird, sharpened to a cruel point. They'd prepare their first tincture near midnight. The ingredients are laid out like a sacrament. Powdered eggshell, wine, vinegar, ash, from a church candle, distillate of marrow, like a sacrament. Powdered eggshell, wine, vinegar, ash, frumpe, and zelvi, and the marrow, like a set. The big ginger. The master lets him stir once, clockwise, he warns. Always clockwise. Unless you're cursing someone, then you stir against the sun. The mixture bubbles. Hisses, turns green, then black. Then the master smiles. The apprentice does not. The vial is sealed and set on a high shelf with dozens of others. What does it do? The apprentice asks. Nothing, the master says. Not yet. Outside, the sky turns pale. Inside, the fire glows low. The apprentice's eyes burn from the smoke and his hands stink of copper and garlic. But the letter he carried is gone. His name already forgotten. He is no longer a visitor. He is a part of the experiment now. Tools of madness, glass, flame, and the alembic secret, they do not call them instruments. That would imply precision and too much confidence. They are tools, yes, but half of them are guesswork and glass and twisted copper. And the other half may or may not have been stolen from an apothecary, a butcher, or a battlefield. At the heart of the alchemical workspace stands the alembic. It looks simple, 2 glass bulbs connected by a curved neck. The bottom one holds the mixture. The top collects what rises. It is both womb and tomb. It bursts transformation or fails with a hiss and a crack. When the apprentice first sees it, he thinks it delicate. Then it explodes. Just a pop, barely louder than a slap, but enough to scatter steaming vinegar and shards of glass across the room. The master doesn't flinch. He wipes his monocle with a rag that might once have been white and mutters, "Too hot." You'll smell the difference next time. The apprentice nods, blinking vinegar out of his eyes. He does not ask what happened to the last apprentice. The table is cluttered with glass, retorts, long-necked flasks that look like swan heads, for distillation of volatile spirits, cucurbits, round-bellied vessels, often filled with suspiciously chunky liquids, vials, and pools, sealed with wax or cloth, labeled in faded Latin or worse symbols. Some are empty. Some are filled with things that move if you stare too long. The apprentice is taught to polish them, not to shine, but to see. Cracks mean catastrophe. Even a hairline fracture could mean a burst of toxic fumes or a fire. The glass is hand-blown, warped, never uniform. One retort curves slightly to the left like it's ashamed of itself. Another has bubbles in the glass, like it tried to escape mid-creation. Then there's the heat. There are no knobs here, no dials, just flame and intuition. The athanor, or digesting furnace, is a squat brick structure with layers of coals inside. The apprentice is told to keep it burning at a precise temperature. How precise? He asks. If your piss boils when you stand too close, it's too hot, the master says. Above the coals, vessels are suspended on tripods. Some sit in sand to distribute the heat. Others rest in baths of oil or brine. The combinations are endless. The disasters, more so. There's a long scar across the stone floor where one concoction boiled over and ate through the flagstones. The master called that one a success. No one knows why. The apprentice learns to measure by smell, by color, by sound, the pop of a proper reaction. The fizz of vinegar and copper, the gurgle of a slow reduction. There are no clocks here. Only candles, only instincts. Every now and then, the master lifts a spoonful of something bubbling and stares into it like it might speak. He says nothing, just nods. Pours it into a mold shaped like a coin or a heart or a small. None of these are currency. And then come the forbidden stools. One day, the master opens a drawer the apprentice has been warned about. Inside, a scalpel that gleams despite its age. A stone pestle stained with something. Dark, a pair of tongs used, allegedly, to extract teeth from saints. A wax-sealed box, labeled simply Materia Humana. He does not open the box. Instead, he hands the apprentice a cloth-bound bundle 5 vials of varying weight. Distilled madness, he says, in case we ever need a shortcut. The apprentice nods and files it in his mind between probably deadly and definitely illegal. There's a lesson every night. The master scribbles on chalkboard walls, triangles inside circles, serpents devouring themselves, suns and moons holding hands. This, he explains, is the formula for transformation. The apprentice asks if he means metal or the soul. The master just smiles. Depends what you're trying to burn away. Ingredients unholy and absurd. What's in the jars? The shelves groan under the weight of 1,000 bottles. Some tall, some squat. Some labeled in careful script. Others just scrawled in a shaky hand. Every jar holds a mystery. Every label hides a secret. The apprentice runs his fingers along the dusty glass, trying not to inhale too deeply. The scents escape in a wave. Earth, rot, something metallic, something sweet and rotten all at once. There's quicksilver first, a silvery liquid that slithers inside its container like a living thing. Known also as mercury, it's the poison that binds the craft together. It gleams with a hypnotic shine, promising transformation, but delivering madness to those careless enough to touch it without gloves. The master warns the apprentice more than once. Mercury is a siren. It will seduce your mind before it kills your body. Next are the powders. A jar labeled ground dragon's bone holds a fine white dust. No one knows if it's really from a dragon. Probably not. Likely burnt animal bones. But the name carries power. Another jar. Powdered unicorn horn. It's actually powdered rhino horn or narwhal tusk, ground to an absurd price. Used mostly to impress patrons and confuse enemies. There are jars filled with bits of everything. Dried newt legs curled like claws. Crushed beetles shimmering with iridescence. The ash of burnt church candles. Still faintly holy vials of snake venom, stored carefully in wax-sealed tubes. Crystals of salt, soaked in moonlight, the more grotesque containers sit in the back. A glass jar sealed with red wax contains a distillate of human marrow. The master is vague about its origin. The bones of those who died too young, he says, mixed with vinegar and fire. The apprentice imagines dark crypts and secret graves. Another jar contains Eye of Newt. Despite the name, it's actually a mix of crushed herbs and crushed glass, meant to trick the mind and maybe the illness. Then come the liquids. A large bottle labeled Tears of a Monk. It is sticky and yellow. No one knows if it's actually tears or some concoction of urine and vinegar. There's also dragon's blood, a thick red resin scraped from a rare tree that oozes like fresh wounds. It's used in spells and tinctures, and sometimes to stain parchments for ritual. The master often mixes ingredients with a grim flourish. He speaks in riddles and Latin phrases as he combines powders and liquids in steaming cauldrons. The apprentice watches as colors shift from glowing green to oily black to blood red, sometimes all in a single pot. The alchemy here is part science, part superstition, and part theater. Each ingredient carries meaning beyond its physical properties. The smell, the texture, even the color is a message. Despite the grotesque and absurd nature of many ingredients, there's a method to the madness. The goal is not always gold or eternal life, but purification of the soul and body, relief from illness, and occasionally an elixir to impress the right patron. In this workshop, the mundane and the magical mingle in every vial. Part 4. The rituals and risks when science becomes sorcery. The workshop is more than glass and fire. It's a theater of ritual where every gesture counts and every mistake might invite disaster. Before the first flame is lit each day, the master draws symbols in chalk on the floor, circles, pentagrams, intersecting triangles. He mutters prayers in Latin, half scientific, half devotional, calling on saints and spirits alike to protect the fragile work. The apprentice watches, half skeptical, half terrified. The rituals aren't mere superstition. They serve practical purposes. The circles mark safe zones where dangerous vapors are less likely to creep. The chants keep the master focused, steadying his nerves when the mixture threatens to boil over. The incense burned at the altar masks the stench of sulfur and burning metals. And maybe, just maybe, the prayers do ward off the truly supernatural. Handling ingredients is a dance on a knife's edge. The master warns repeatedly, mercury will creep across your skin, unnoticed. Quicksilver will poison your breath. A drop of arsenic might be hiding in the powders labeled harmless. A careless spill could send the apprentice into convulsions or worse. The apprentice wears gloves, but they are leather, old and thin. His hands grow sore. cracked. Yet he learns to trust touch gentle, deliberate, patient. Every day brings a new risk. The crucible might explode. The alembic might shatter under heat. The fumes might choke, blinding or dizzying the unwary. The master shows scars burns that never fully healed, fingers bent at odd angles from accidents. Alchemy, he says, is the art of courting death while hoping for life. The rituals extend beyond the workshop. Before beginning any experiment, the master lights a candle and sprinkles salt around the workspace. He dips a feather in holy water, flicking droplets in the air. He places a vial of dragon's blood, resin beside the fire, believing it purifies the flame. The apprentice imitates these acts at first awkwardly, then with growing reverence. There's also the shadow of secrecy. No alchemist wants their formulas stolen or their reputation ruined by failure. Lessons are whispered, books are locked. Apprentices are warned, trust no one outside these walls. When strange lights flicker in the night sky or animals behave oddly nearby, the master nods gravely. The spirits are restless. The apprentice wonders if the spirits are real or if they're just the smoke and mirrors of a dangerous craft. Still, the work continues. Draw, stir, heat, watch, record. Each ritual, each precaution, is a thread in a delicate tapestry woven between knowledge and myth, between hope and despair. And in the flickering candlelight, the apprentice begins to understand that this is more than chemistry. It is a slow journey into the unknown. The cost of knowledge, failures, madness, and the price of the philosopher's stone, the quest for the philosopher's stone. The legendary substance said to turn base metals into gold and grant eternal life has driven many alchemists to the edge. Some lose their fortunes, some lose their sanity. Some disappear into shadows never to be seen again. The master's eyes flicker with bitter memories as he recounts tales of friends who went mad, their minds consumed by smoke and dreams. He doesn't speak of them often, but the apprentice listens closely. Failure is the constant companion here. Every explosion, every spilled vial, every concoction that turns to ash is a reminder that mastery is a distant, often cruel goal. The workshop smells of burnt powders and broken dreams. The air is thick with the residue of hope and despair. Madness creeps slowly. It starts with headaches, restless nights, whispers in the dark. Then come the vision's flames that burn without heat, shadows that move in the corner of the eye, voices speaking in forgotten tongues. Some alchemists take to muttering to themselves, scribbling indecipherable notes, or worse, talking to their own reflections as if they were separate beings. The master shares his own scars, mental and physical. He has seen apprentices crack under the weight. He has had moments where the fire in his heart burns too hot to contain. Yet he continues, because the promise, the possibility of transmutation is a siren song. The price is paid not just in sanity, but in life. Many have succumbed to poisonings, mercury, arsenic, lead ingested unknowingly or through careless hands. Some die in flames, attempting dangerous experiments late into the night. Others vanish, rumored to have fled or joined secret cults seeking forbidden knowledge. The apprentice understands that each vial is a gamble, each flame a temptation, each ritual a pact. But there is also a strange beauty here. In the pursuit of the impossible, alchemists have laid groundwork for future science. Their failures, painful and numerous, paved the way for modern chemistry. They were the original mad scientists, fueled by curiosity and desperation in equal parts. As the apprentice looks around the cluttered room, the shattered glass, the burned notes, the jars of bizarre ingredients, he feels a mixture of dread and awe. He wonders if he too will pay the price, or if he will be the one to glimpse the secret behind the veil. Of rats and remains, the nightwork of the gravedigger, the graveyard shift, lanterns and uneven earth, the churchyard waits in darkness, not peaceful, not silent. Only the occasional hoot of an owl, the skitter of a rat's tiny paws, and the low murmur of wind threading through twisted branches. Lanterns flicker against stone walls, casting long shadows that dance like ghosts across the cracked earth. The gravedigger arrives late, his boots crunching on broken twigs and clods of damp soil. His lantern swings low, illuminating a path across graves, sunken and overgrown. The air is thick with moisture and decay, half-remembered graves beneath layers of earth, some disturbed by time, some by less natural hands. He surveys the plot, hands tucked deep in his worn coat. Uneven earth is a constant challenge, roots weave like serpents. Bones from old graves break through shallow soil, and rain makes the ground slippery and treacherous. The digger doesn't complain. He's learned to move with the land, to respect the dead without courting their wrath. His tools are simple but brutal. A spade, a mattock, and a sturdy wooden stake for leverage. The night shift is lonely but necessary. Burials often happen after sundown, both to avoid crowds and to keep the sick away. He digs in near silence. The only sound's his breaths and the steady scrape of blade against earth. Sometimes the ground resists a root too thick, a stone too stubborn, or worse, the remnants of those buried in haste and fear. Lantern light plays tricks. Grave markers loom like sentinels. Shadows deepen, and the digger's breath hangs in clouds. He's no stranger to fear. Stories of restless spirits swirl around these grounds. Some say the dead whisper to those who dig too deep or disturb the wrong plot. He's never heard a whisper himself, but sometimes, just sometimes, the hairs on his neck prick. Each grave is a story. Not one repeated in daylight, not one told at taverns. A tale of lives lost, families shattered, and fears buried beneath layers of soil. The gravedigger's work is the last chapter, the final cold act in the long play of death. Digging through layers, bones of the forgotten, the shovel bites into the cold earth, sinking past loose soil and tangled roots. Each layer reveals a chapter, sometimes centuries old, of lives that time nearly erased. Here, beneath the moon's pale light, the gravedigger moves carefully, knowing the ground is a fragile archive. Every scrape risks disturbing stories better left buried or rediscovered with reverence. Beneath the fresh dirt lie fragments, bones bleached by time, broken skulls, rib cages collapsed like brittle cages of memory. Some graves are neat, others haphazard, victims of hasty burial during plague outbreaks or famine. The digger pauses, fingers brushing soil away from a skull cracked not by age, but by desperation, perhaps a victim of violence or the chaos of disease. It's not just human remains that haunt the layers. The ground is thick with animal bones, rats, cats, dogs, creatures, both companions and scavengers. Their skeletons mingle among the human dead, reminders that death was never tidy. Sometimes, coffins lie broken, warped by water or rot. Iron nails rust into the earth like old teeth. Wood splinters crumble to dust, and the pungent scent of decay rises in soft waves. The digger doesn't flinch at the smell. It's part of the night's work, a grim perfume of endings and the slow return to earth. Unearthing bones requires a delicate balance of strength and care. Too rough, and the remains shatter. Too gentle, and the earth resists. The gravedigger's hands move methodically, practiced through countless nights spent unraveling the dead's silent language. Each bone tells a story. Fractures speak of violence or accident. Worn joints hint at a lifetime of toil. Teeth stained by diet or disease. The layers aren't just soil and bones, they hold history's residue. Poverty and plague etched into skeletons by malnutrition or infection. War and famine whispered in broken limbs and ragged graves. For the gravedigger, these remains are more than work. They're a somber connection to the forgotten. Some nights, the graveyard feels alive. Not with spirits or ghosts, but with the weight of memory pressing down through centuries. The gravedigger listens, not for voices, but for the silent stories hidden beneath his feet. Coffin makers and shroud stealers, the coffin maker's workshop is tucked away behind a row of crumbling houses. The air thick with sawdust and the sharp tang of freshly cut wood. Here, artisans carve the vessels that will hold the dead, a grim craft steeped in both tradition and necessity. Coffins vary wildly in quality and price. The wealthy get polished oak, lined with silk and adorned with iron handles. The poor often receive rough pine or even nothing at all, just a hastily dug hole lined with brush. Coffin making is more than carpentry. It's a solemn ritual. Each board is measured with care, each nail hammered with a steady hand. The maker knows the coffin's role is final and absolute. It must protect the body from the elements, the animals, and the eyes of the living for as long as possible. But sometimes coffins are scarce. During plagues or mass deaths, demand outstrips supply. The makers work frantically, sometimes cutting corners, sometimes improvising with whatever timber is available. In this scarcity, a darker trade thrives: shroud stealing. Shrouds, simple cloth wraps used to cover bodies, are valuable. They carry the scent of the dead and the fabric of last farewells. But more importantly, cloth is precious and expensive. Some desperate souls resort to stealing freshly buried shrouds from graves. Nighttime thieves creep into cemeteries, prying open coffins or tugging at loose earth to retrieve the cloth, which is then sold or repurposed. Shroud stealing is a crime born of poverty and desperation. It is whispered about in taverns and feared by the bereaved, who worry their loved ones might not rest in peace. Grave diggers often find signs: disturbed earth, missing cloth, broken wood, and have little power to stop it. The thieves are ghosts themselves, shadows slipping through the darkness. The stolen shrouds sometimes end up in markets, sold to tailors or resold to poorer families unable to afford new burial cloth. Others are rumored to be used in occult practices, woven into charms or curses. The line between necessity and sacrilege blurs in the cold moonlight. Despite this grim undercurrent, coffin makers and grave diggers share a silent respect. They understand their work is part of a fragile chain life to death, earth to spirit. Each coffin built, each grave dug, each shroud mourned or stolen tells a story of survival, loss, and the thin veil between worlds. Rats, rain, and rancid soil. The night air is thick with the scent of wet earth and rock. Rain patters softly on broken tombstones, soaking the ground until it turns to a heavy, clinging mud that sucks at boots and tools alike. The graveyard becomes a quagmire, an unforgiving landscape that tests even the most seasoned digger. Beneath this sodden surface, rats reign. They scurry in twitching masses, their eyes gleaming like polished beads in the lantern light. They are scavengers, survivors, creatures born of decay, weaving through the ruins of death itself. Rats are more than a nuisance here. They gnaw at wooden coffins, slip through cracks, and feast on what the earth offers: loose flesh, forgotten scraps, even bones gnawed to splinters. Their presence is a constant reminder that death is never clean or neat. The grave digger knows better than to fight them directly. Instead, he learns their patterns, their nesting spots, and works around them with wary respect. Rain worsens everything. Each drop seeps into the soil, carrying with it the odors of decay and earth. The mud clings to gloves, tools, and boots, making every movement slow and heavy. Water pools in shallow graves, mixing with silt and remnants of coffins to form a thick, fetid sludge. The air is heavy and cold, and the dampness creeps into bones and clothes alike. The rancid soil holds stories too. It's rich with the nutrients of life and death, a grotesque compost of flesh, bone, and earthworms. The smell is pungent, earthy, and sour, with a faint metallic tang that hints at the chemical battle playing out beneath the surface. For the gravedigger, the soil is both a barrier and a truth. It conceals but also preserves. Working in such conditions is a trial of endurance. Hands numb from cold, back aching from bending, eyes stinging from smoke and rain, the gravedigger presses on. His tools become extensions of his body, each movement practiced and purposeful, slicing through earth and mud with grim determination. Yet, in this muck and mire, life continues. Worms wriggle in the dark soil, moths flit around lantern light. The occasional crow caws mournfully in the distance, a lone witness to the night's labor. Death and life entwined in a slow, inevitable dance. The gravedigger is both caretaker and witness tending to the dead amid the grime and the vermin, navigating rain-soaked earth with a grim, quiet resolve. The final rites, quiet conversations with the dead. The last shovelfuls of earth fall softly over the coffin, muffling the echoes of the living and the dead alike. The gravedigger stands back, lantern lowered, watching the small mound take shape, an earthly whisper marking where a life now rests. Around the grave, family and friends gather quietly, their faces lit by flickering candlelight, shadows stretching long and trembling in the cold night air. There are no grand speeches, no proclamations of heroism or glory, only whispered prayers, soft murmurs, and the occasional stifled sob. Hands clasp rosary beads, fingers tracing worn crosses, lips moving silently in devotion. These moments are fragile and private. The weight of grief is almost tangible, pressing down on shoulders bent against the chill. The living speak in hushed tones, telling stories of regret, hope, and memories too precious for the harsh light of day. The gravedigger feels the heavy stillness settle like a shroud over the gathering. He's seen the scene countless times, yet each is different, each a unique tapestry of loss woven into the fabric of the town's history. He knows his role is more than digging holes. He is a keeper of secrets, a silent witness to the final bridge between life and death. Some bring tokens to place on the grave, a pressed flower, a carved wooden figure, a scrap of cloth. Others simply stand, hands in pockets, gazing downward, lost in thoughts no one else can hear. The graveyard becomes a sacred space, not just for the dead, but for those left behind to carry the weight of absence. As the candles gutter and the night deepens, the living begin to drift away, leaving the gravedigger alone once more with the soil and the silence. He pauses, eyes scanning the stars barely visible through a canopy of clouds, then turns to the next task, the unending cycle of death, burial, and remembrance. The final rites are quiet conversations, soft words exchanged between worlds, an acknowledgement of endings, and a promise that memory endures beneath the earth. Chamber pots and curses. The life of a gong farmer, a knock after midnight. The gong farmer's call. The clock strikes midnight, but the city doesn't sleep. Instead, in narrow alleyways and under moonless skies, a soft knock sounds sharp, deliberate on the heavy wooden door of a small grimy cottage. Inside, a man stirs from restless sleep, sweat clinging to his skin. The knock repeats, urgent and insistent. It's the call of the night, the summons that signals a grim but vital task. The gong farmer's work begins. The gong farmer is no nobleman, no scholar, no knight. He's the city's secret custodian, a man who delves into the dark underbelly of Tudor life, the cesspits beneath the streets, where the city's waste collects in festering pools. This work is hated, feared, and necessary, a job soaked in stench and shadow. In his lantern-lit home, the gong farmer gathers his gear. Buckets lined with thick hides, heavy hooks for stirring and scooping, and a long wooden shovel worn smooth from years of toil. The smell is already creeping in the bitter, sour tang of human waste mingling with damp earth and mold. Outside, the city sleeps uneasily. Narrow, cobbled streets glisten with recent rain, the shadows cast by shuttered windows deep and impenetrable. Only a few night wanderers, a watchman here, stray dog there, break the silence. The gong farmer's call is a ritual in itself. The knock, the gathering of tools, the silent stepping through sleeping streets all mark the passage from the ordinary world into the realm of filth and decay. As the door closes behind him, the man crosses a threshold from man to shadow, from citizen to the city's grim secret. This is a world where courage and endurance are tested every night, where every breath is a gamble, and every step sinks deeper into the sticky, fetid muck of survival. Descending into the cesspit, the trapdoor creaks open with a protest, revealing a yawning shaft plunged into darkness. The gong farmer's lantern casts a trembling circle of light down the steps, slick with slime and decay. He inhales sharply, a thick, choking miasma rises to meet him, heavy with the sour bite of human waste, stagnant water, and the faint undertone of rot. Stepping down, the air grows cooler but heavier, each breath a battle between necessity and revulsion. The walls close in a narrow, rough-hewn chamber lined with crumbling stone, slick with moisture. The pungent stench assaults the senses, a relentless reminder of the cesspit's purpose. The cesspit is no ordinary hole. It is the city's sewer before sewers, a primitive pit where human waste collects, festers, and waits for the gong farmer's nightly intervention. Layers of muck, sludge, and semi-solid waste form a treacherous landscape beneath the streets. The gong farmer moves with practiced care, every step calculated to avoid sinking into the oozing muck. His tools scrape and hook at the waste, breaking it up, stirring it, and hauling it into buckets. Each bucket, heavy with filth, is a trophy and a burden, a night's work distilled into fetid liquid and solid matter. The work is exhausting and perilous. Slippery surfaces hide sharp debris, and the risk of infection looms in every breath. Rats, drawn by the stench, skitter just beyond the lantern's glow-silent scavengers in this underworld. The farmer's hands are raw and blistered, his clothes soaked through with sweat and waste. Yet he labors on, driven by necessity, by the knowledge that without his work, the city above would drown in its own filth. The stench clings like a second skin. It burrows into the nostrils and throat, a constant reminder of the city's fragile balance between order and decay. Emerging from the cesspit hours later, the gong farmer is a man changed. Wet, filthy, exhausted, but alive. He shoulders his heavy buckets, the night air sharp against his face. A fleeting reprieve before the work begins anew. The tools of stink, buckets, hooks, and the gong farmer's tools are a grim toolkit honed over years of grime and sweat. Buckets, thick and heavy, crafted from oak or sturdy leather, are lined with pitch to hold the foul sludge without leaking. Each one carries the weight of the city's waste and the worker's burden. The handles are worn smooth from endless nights of hauling and balancing, their wooden frames groaning under the sticky load. Hooks, long and twisted, are essential for stirring and breaking apart the dense layers of muck. Some are forged by local blacksmiths, their iron tips sharpened and curved to catch hidden debris or to pry open collapsed sections of the cesspit. These hooks are extensions of the gong farmer's arms tools of survival in a hostile liquid graveyard. Wooden shovels and paddles join the arsenal. Their surface is slick with slime. They are used to scoop, push, and redistribute the waste, often while balancing precariously on slick stone or rotting wood planks. Each tool carries the smell of rot, but also the tacit respect of a job well done when the cesspit is cleared enough to prevent overflow and catastrophe. The gong farmer's clothes are as important as his tools. Heavy leather boots often caked with mud and waste, thick woolen trousers that resist some of the damp, and a coarse linen shirt worn beneath layers of grime. A wide-brimmed hat or cloth head wrap helps keep the worst of the dripping muck at bay. But the tools are more than just physical objects. They carry oaths and superstitions. The gong farmer mutters curses and prayers under his breath-bitter words aimed at warding off sickness, bad luck, and restless spirits. Some swear that the hooks themselves are blessed or cursed, depending on the day. Old wives' tailies warn of ghostly apparitions rising from the sludge to drag the unwary beneath the mire. The gong farmer scoffs but keeps a sharp eye on flickers of shadow and movement. Superstition is a shield against the unknown, a fragile comfort in a job ruled by filth and danger. Each tool, each curse, each careful movement is a thread in a larger tapestry. The grim, unglamorous dance of survival that keeps the city from drowning in its own waste. Carrying filth through sleeping streets, the city sleeps beneath a blanket of darkness, unaware of the pungent procession winding its way through narrow alleys and cobbled lanes. The gong farmer shoulders his heavy buckets, each brimming with the night's harvest of human waste, a grim cargo that reeks of decay and desperation. Lantern light casts flickering shadows as he moves cautiously, avoiding the slumbering townsfolk and the watchful eyes of the occasional night guard. The smell is a noxious cloud trailing him like a ghost sharp, sour, and unrelenting. The streets are treacherous. Puddles of stagnant water, uneven cobblestones slick with moss and mud, and the occasional pile of refuse make every step a test of balance and endurance. The buckets sway, threatening to spill their fetid contents onto the unsuspecting pavement. Passing shuttered windows, the gong farmer imagines faces pressed against the glass, curious or horrified at the sight of a man carrying the city's filth through the dead of night. but he knows the work is necessary. Without him, waste would pile in streets and homes, turning the city into a cesspool of disease and death. The burden is both physical and psychological. The weight of the buckets presses down on his shoulders. The stench clings to his skin and clothes. Yet, he walks with a grim determination, fueled by the knowledge that his labor protects countless lives, even if he is reviled for it. At times, the gong farmer crosses paths with others of the night street sweepers, night watchmen, or the occasional drunkard. Few acknowledge him. Fewer offer thanks. His world is one of shadows and silence, where survival depends on endurance and discretion. Eventually, the gong farmer reaches the designated dumping grounds, often a riverbank or open field far from the city's heart. With a practiced motion, he empties the buckets, the fetid slurry splashing and seeping into the earth or water. This final act completes the grim cycle, sending the city's waste away to mingle with nature's own decay. The return journey is lighter, but no less perilous. The gong farmer's clothes cling damp and foul, his muscles ache, and his spirit is weary. Yet with the coming dawn, he will rest briefly before the cycle begins anew. The wages of waste, shame, and survival, the gong farmer's work is never done, but it is always shrouded in shame. He walks through life as a necessary ghost, resented, avoided, and burdened by the weight of filth he carries, and the stigma he can never shed. In the marketplace and taverns, whispers follow him. Children are warned to stay away. Neighbors cross the street. The gong farmer is a living reminder of the city's darkest realities of death, decay, and human vulnerability. Yet beneath the scorn lies a harsh truth. Without the gong farmer, the city would drown in its own waste. His labor keeps the streets clean, the water flowing, and disease at bay. Survival demands resilience. The gong farmer builds a life around the edges, eking out what he can from the margins. He trades favors, barters for food, and clings to a community of others who live with similar burdens. His home is humble, often a cramped room above the stinking cesspits he tends. But it is a refuge from the world's judgment. Here he can rest, wash off the day's grime, and steal moments of peace. Money is scarce but steady. The gong farmer is paid just enough to survive, but never enough to escape the filth that defines his existence. Every coin carries the bitter tang of sacrifice. Some turn to superstition, believing that the gong farmer's work keeps evil spirits at bay, that his curses ward off plague and misfortune. Others see him as cursed, a man touched by death and decay. Despite it all, the gong farmer endures. His life is a testament to the harsh reality that survival often comes at a cost, unseen and unspoken. In the darkest corners of the city, among chamber pots and curses, he carries the burden so others might live. Vermin and velvet, the itchy profession of the louse collector in the queen's bedchamber. A hunter's mourning. The dawn breaks gently over the royal palace. But for the louse collector, the day begins in shadow and silence. The grand chambers of the queen, adorned with silk drapes, velvet cushions, and gilded furnishings, hold secrets not told in courtly whispers. The relentless, unseen battle against vermin. In the quiet hours before the court awakens, the louse collector enters. Tools in hand, a fine-toothed comb, a small knife, and a basket lined with cloth to hold the captured pests. His eyes scan the queen's hair and clothing with meticulous care, searching for the telltale signs of lice and their eggs. This mourning ritual is both intimate and invasive. The collector's hands move deftly, separating strands of golden or raven hair, lifting layers of velvet and lace to uncover the microscopic enemies that torment even the highest ranks. The queen remains still, her face composed, a mask of regal calm despite the itch and discomfort hidden beneath her ornate headdress. The louse collector's work is a silent service, unseen but indispensable in the fight against disease and social disgrace. Outside the chamber, servants and courtiers go about their duties, unaware of the tiny battle unfolding in the heart of the palace. For the louse collector, this is the start of a long day hunting vermin in the most unlikely of places. Fine combs and boiled linens, the louse collector's arsenal is deceptively simple, but crucial. fine-tooth combs crafted with precision to snatch even the tiniest of lice and their eggs. Made of polished bone or horn, these combs have teeth so close together that only the smallest pest can slip through. Each comb is carefully cleaned and often boiled to ensure no hitchhikers survive between uses. Boiling linens and garments was an essential ritual in the battle against vermin. Heavy fabrics, velvet, wool, silked, and steaming water to kill any lice or nicks clinging to threads and seams. This process was laborious and required careful handling, especially with delicate court garments that could easily be ruined by excessive heat or moisture. The louse collector didn't just comb hair. He oversaw the maintenance of the queen's wardrobe, coordinating with servants to ensure garments were treated regularly. This alliance was vital. A missed shirt or cloak could undo hours of painstaking work. Beyond the physical tools and rituals, there was a choreography to the process. The collector worked methodically, sectioning hair and fabric with practiced hands, knowing that a single missed patch could lead to an outbreak that rippled through the court. The rituals extended beyond the queen's chambers. In the servants' quarters and kitchens, linens were boiled and combed regularly, a constant reminder that lice were a threat across all social strata. Even the finest velvets could not protect against the relentless march of these tiny invaders. Through it all, the louse collector remained a silent guardian, a master of fine combs and boiling pots, fighting a war invisible to the eye, but felt by every itchy, restless scalp. Itch, blood, and hierarchy lice weren't just tiny pests. They were social barometers. The presence or absence of those relentless little critters whispered secrets about status, cleanliness, and even morality. In the tightly controlled world of Tudor courts, an itchy scalp could be a scandal waiting to erupt. The louse collector understood that infestation wasn't just discomfort, it was a breach of decorum. A noble caught scratching publicly risked embarrassment and gossip. Worse, lice could spread disease, making them a real threat beyond mere nuisance. Itching often led to bleeding. Scratched scalps became raw, sometimes infected, and these wounds left visible evidence of an unspoken mark of shame. The louse collector's careful work prevented such disgrace, snatching lice before they could multiply and turn the court's heads in disgust. Hierarchy dictated who got what level of care. The queen and her closest ladies enjoyed the most attentive louse collection, with daily combings and freshly boiled linens. Lower-ranked servants might receive only occasional attention or none at all. This disparity fed resentment and whispered rumors in the shadows. Were the scullery maids' frequent scratches a sign of poor hygiene or neglect? Did the duchess's flawless coiffure hide secret infestations? The louse collector was a silent observer of these social undercurrents, privy to intimate details rarely spoken aloud. Sometimes, the collector found himself an unwilling confidant. Secrets spilled in whispered conversations during the delicate dance of hair parting and combing. Scandals, romances, and rivalries all traced back to the scalp. Yet, despite the discomfort and stigma, lice were a near-universal affliction. No one was immune, and the louse collector's presence was a constant reminder of the fragile balance between appearance and reality. In this itchy battlefield, the louse collector fought not only against vermin, but also against the biting social hierarchies that define Tudor life. Secrets in the hair, gossip from the scalp line. The louse collector's work is a silent intrusion into the most private spaces, close enough to feel the warmth of breath. To hear the faintest whispers, and to witness the unguarded moments hidden beneath polished surfaces. As fingers part hair and combs sift through tangled strands, the collector becomes an inadvertent confidant, catching secrets meant only for the ears of trusted friends. Whispers of courtly intrigue drift through the chambers. Forbidden romances, jealous rivalries, plots spun in hushed tones. The louse collector hears it all. No one suspects the man beneath the velvet and lace is also a keeper of secrets. His ears as finely tuned as his comb. Servants whisper about the lady's new admirer. Courtiers fret over the sudden illness of a favored noble. Rumors ripple, carried on strands of hair and tucked beneath folds of embroidered fabric. The collector moves discreetly, never revealing what he knows. His silence is a currency, a shield against suspicion, and a tool for survival. He trades discretion for continued access, navigating the delicate balance between visibility and invisibility. Sometimes, the collector offers subtle hints, a knowing glance or a careful choice of words to those who might benefit from his inside knowledge. But always, he remains an enigma, a shadow lurking behind a veneer of courtly grace. Beyond politics and scandal, the collector witnesses moments of quiet humanity. A tear traced along the cheek, a whispered apology, a hopeful smile, all glimpses into lives lived under the constant scrutiny of status and appearance. In the tangled web of hair and whispers, the louse collector is both hunter and guardian, navigating the delicate dance of power, secrecy, and survival. Paid in silence, reputation, and disgust, the louse collector moves through the palace corridors as a ghost necessary, yet never truly seen or welcomed. His work is invaluable, protecting the health and dignity of the court, but the price is a reputation wrapped in silence and shadow. He's paid well enough to survive, but not enough to escape the stigma. To the courtiers, he is both indispensable and repellent, a man associated with dirt, disease, and secrets best left unspoken. In social settings, the louse collector is avoided. Conversations hush when he enters a room. Invitations are rare. His presence is a reminder of the filth that no amount of velvet can hide. This isolation is part of the job's burden. He bears it quietly, knowing that his livelihood depends on discretion, both his own and that of those who employ him. Rumors swirl about the collector's own hygiene and health. Some whisper that he is cursed, or that his work has tainted him beyond repair. Others speculate on his personal life, if he has family, friends, or a life outside the palace walls. Yet, beneath the disgust and distance, the louse collector carves out a fragile existence. He builds relationships in the shadows with servants, with other marginalized workers, finding kinship in shared hardship. His work is a delicate balance between repulsion and necessity, silence and survival. He is a man paid to touch what others avoid, to see what others deny, and to live in a world where reputation is both shield and shackle. Despite it all, the louse collector endures. A silent guardian of the court's health, a keeper of its secrets, and a testament to the invisible labor that underpins even the most gilded lives. Burning bread and broken knees, the medieval baker's burden, the midnight ovens roar long before dawn. When the village streets lie silent and cloaked in mist, the medieval baker stokes the fires of his ovens. The glow of the embers flickers against soot-darkened walls, casting shadows that dance with the heat. The roar of the ovens is a constant companion, an unyielding beast demanding attention, tending and vigilance through the coldest hours. The baker's day begins in darkness, a world lit only by the orange blaze and the occasional flicker of a lantern. Hands dusted with flour move with practiced grace, shaping dough into loaves destined to sustain the town. The smell of yeast and wood smoke fills the air, a promise of warmth and sustenance. Each batch requires precision and timing, a delicate balance between fire and flour. Too hot and the bread burns to charcoal. Too cool and the dough remains raw, a waste of precious grain. The baker's body aches from hours bent over kneading troughs and tending ovens, knees worn from long hours on cold stone floors. Despite the quiet of the sleeping town, the baker's world is alive with crackling flames, hissing steam, and the rhythmic thump of dough hitting wooden tables. The midnight oven's roar is both a challenge and a comfort, a heartbeat in the stillness. The baker knows that when the first light of dawn breaks, the townsfolk will line up, hungry and weary, waiting for bread that represents more than food. It is a lifeline. Each loaf carries the weight of community, faith, and survival. Flour dust and fire scars. The air in the bakehouse is thick with flour dust, a fine, white haze that settles on every surface, clinging to skin and clothes like a ghostly shroud. Breathing it in day after day, year after year, takes its toll. Coughs become a constant companion, and lungs bear the slow wear of invisible abrasion. Hands are rough and cracked from endless kneading and exposure to heat and moisture. The baker's skin bears the map of his trade calluses formed from gripping wooden paddles. Burns from hot ovens and scars from sharp tools used in cutting and scoring dough. Fire scars tell stories of near misses moments when a careless slip brought flesh too close to searing heat. The smell of singed skin mingles with yeast and smoke, a harsh reminder that the line between nourishment and injury is thin. Knees and backs ache from long hours spent bent over heavy troughs, mixing dough by hand in cold, drafty rooms. The baker's work is both art and endurance, demanding strength and resilience. Eyes strain under flickering lantern light, watching dough rise and fall, adjusting oven temperatures by sight and feel in an era before thermometers. A moment's distraction can ruin a batch, wasting precious grain and inviting the wrath of customers and guildmasters alike. Yet, despite the pain and hazards, the baker presses on. His craft is a labor of necessity and pride, each loaf a small victory against hunger and hardship. The tax collector and the bread thief medieval. Bakers didn't just battle ovens and flour dust. They faced another relentless force. The tax collector. Every sack of grain, every loaf baked, was subject to levies that fed the king's coffers and the local lord's ambitions. Taxes came in the form of grain tithes, fees on sales, and sometimes direct levies on bakers themselves. Failed to pay, and the consequences were swift and brutal: fines, confiscation of goods, or even imprisonment. The tax collector was both feared and hated, a symbol of the crown's reach into the baker's humble shop. His presence added tension to the daily grind, forcing bakers to carefully balance profit, survival, and compliance. On the other side of this struggle were the bread thieves, the starving, poor, and desperate who risked everything for a stolen crust. Stealing bread was a crime punished harshly, but the punishment often failed to deter those driven by hunger. Bakers faced the impossible, guarding their precious stock against thieves while trying to keep prices low enough for the community to afford. Caught between crown and crowd, bakers often sympathized with the thieves, understanding the desperation that drove theft. Rumors whispered through the town of secret bread giveaways in the dead of night, small acts of rebellion or charity that blurred the lines of legality. These quiet defiance stories painted bakers not just as tradesmen, but as reluctant players in the social struggles of their time. The tension between tax collector and bread thief defined much of the baker's world. Constant negotiation between survival, authority, and mercy. Guilds, grain, and gambling with quality in medieval towns. Bakers weren't lone operators. They were bound by the strict oversight of guilds. These powerful organizations regulated who could bake, how bread was made, and the quality standards that protected consumers and profits. Guild halls echoed with the heavy footsteps of masters and apprentices, their decisions shaping every loaf that left the oven. Grain was the lifeblood of baking, but its quality was a constant gamble. A bad harvest could mean coarse, heavy flour, or flour contaminated with husks and dirt. Bakers had to know their suppliers well, often gambling their reputations on each sack that arrived. Mixing inferior grain risked producing hard, unpalatable bread, something that could provoke angry townsfolk and costly fines from the guild. Guild inspectors patrolled bakehouses like hawks. They measured loaf sizes, tested for proper ingredients, and watched for cheating like diluting flour with sawdust or other fillers. Punishments for infractions were harsh, including public shaming, fines, or even whipping. The guild's iron grip maintained standards, but also created a tense atmosphere of surveillance and competition among bakers. Within the guild, politics thrived. Master bakers vied for influence, apprentices schemed for advancement, and rivalries flared over market rights and supply contracts. These internal dynamics often dictated who succeeded and who struggled to keep ovens burning. Bakers also navigated fluctuating grain prices, theft, and the constant threat of famine. In lean times, some resorted to cutting corners, a risky gamble with both the guild and their customers. The pressure to deliver consistent quality under these conditions was relentless. Yet, despite these challenges, the guild system offered bakers protection and a sense of community. It provided training, regulated competition, and sometimes pooled resources to weather hard times. This delicate balance between control and camaraderie shaped the medieval baker's daily grind. The last loaf, feeding a town, feeding a faith as the sun rises over the village. The baker's work reaches its crescendo. The last loaves come from the oven, warm and fragrant, ready to be delivered to hungry hands. Bread is more than just food. It is the staff of life, the cornerstone of daily survival, and a symbol woven deeply into a fabric of faith and community. In medieval Europe, bread was sacred. The Eucharist, the Holy Communion bread, echoed this reverence, connecting the earthly sustenance to divine grace. Bakers knew their craft carried spiritual weight, every loaf a humble offering to sustain both body and soul. Feeding the town was a burden and a blessing. The baker's ovens fueled the lives of peasants, merchants, and nobles alike. Each loaf carried the weight of many hands, the farmer who sowed the grain, the miller who ground the flour, and the baker who transformed it into sustenance. Famine and hardship made bread a precious commodity. When the harvest failed or war disrupted supply lines, the baker became a figure of hope or frustration, a gatekeeper to life itself. Bread shortages could spark unrest, riots, and desperate measures. Religious festivals and holy days added layers of ritual to the baker's calendar. Special breads were baked rich with spices, honey, or shaped into symbolic forms, marking celebrations and connecting communities through shared tradition. The baker's work was tireless, demanding, and often thankless. Yet, in every crust and crumb, there was purpose: to nourish a town, uphold faith, and keep alive the delicate balance between survival and belief. In the smoky warmth of the bakehouse, amid flour dust and fire scars, the medieval baker bore a burden far greater than bread alone. He fed people and fed their hope. Ink and authority. The monk who copied the world morning vespers in cold ink before the dawn breaks. The monastery awakens to the solemn call of morning vespers. The chants echo in the stone cloisters, a rhythm of devotion that sets the tone for the day. Monks, clad in coarse habits, gather in quiet rows, voices rising in harmony, before retreating to their scriptoria, the rooms where worlds are copied by hand. The scriptorium is cold and austere, the chill seeping into bones and inkpots alike. The faint scent of parchment mingles with candle smoke and the occasional whiff of beeswax from melting candles. The monk prepares his tools: quills, ink wells filled with a dark, viscous liquid, and crisp sheets of vellum awaiting the scratch of his pen. Each stroke of the quill is deliberate, a blend of art, devotion, and authority. Mistakes are costly. The pages must be perfect, for these texts carry not just knowledge, but the weight of truth itself. The monk's hands, though steady, bear the marks of years at the desk callous fingers, ink-stained nails, and joints stiffened by repetitive motions. In this cold light, the copying of the world begins anew, one letter at a time. The rhythm of the scriptorium is punctuated by silence, broken only by the soft scratch of quill on parchment, the occasional cough, or the gentle turn of a page. Here, the medieval monk wields his power not with sword or crown, but with ink and patience. Illuminating the edges, tiny art and big meaning as the monk's quill dances across the parchment. Delicate images begin to bloom along the edges, illuminations that transform the text into a living tapestry. These tiny artworks, painstakingly crafted with bright pigments and gold leaf, serve more than decoration. They are windows into spiritual truths, moral lessons, and sometimes subtle satire. Every swirl of vine, every creature lurking in the margins carries meaning. A serpent might warn against sin. A peacock, symbol of resurrection. A rabbit, the fragility of life. The monk's hand brings these symbols to life with painstaking detail, turning blank space into a visual sermon. The pigments are rare and precious lapis light from distant lands for blue gold dust that gleams in candlelight. Mixing these materials required skill, patience, and reverence. Each brushstroke was a prayer, but illuminations were not always solemn. Sometimes, monks inserted playful images, grotesque faces, mythical beasts, or mischievous imps hiding among holy text. These whimsical touches hinted at the humanity behind the piety, the flicker of humor in a world ruled by solemnity. Beyond the artistry, these images served practical purposes. They guided the reader's eye, marked important passages, and provided mnemonic devices for memorization. In a world where books were scarce and literacy limited, these tiny visual cues carried weight beyond their size. Creating illuminated manuscripts was a slow, painstaking process, days spent perfecting a single letter or figure. Hours devoted to layering pigment and gold until the page shimmered with life. For the monk, every margin was a canvas, every manuscript a sacred work. Mistakes in margins. When words go wrong, despite the monk's devotion and painstaking care, mistakes inevitably found their way into manuscripts. A slip of the quill, a misread word, or a misheard phrase could twist the meaning of a text, sometimes with hilarious or dangerous consequences. Errors ranged from minor misspellings to entire passages gone awry. A single letter misplaced might turn angel into angle, or blessed into blessly. Such small shifts could alter prayers, legal documents, or medical treatises in ways the monks never intended. Sometimes, mistakes were discovered by later scribes and corrected with painstaking. Notes in the margins. Tiny calls for attention that reveal the layered history of a manuscript's creation. Other errors remained uncorrected, becoming permanent features of the text. Marginal notes, often added after the main text was copied, offer a glimpse into the monk's reactions, expressions of frustration, humor, or even cryptic warnings. Some scribes left cheeky comments or doodles mocking their own errors. In rare cases, errors led to scandal. Miswritten passages in religious texts could cause theological confusion or even accusations of heresy. Monks walked a tightrope, balancing human fallibility with the sacred duty of preserving knowledge. One famous example involves a manuscript where a prayer for peace was miscopied as a call for pigs to be blessed, an embarrassing slip that circulated as both cautionary tale and comic relief. Despite these mistakes, the dedication to copying the world's knowledge remained unwavering. Each error, correction, and annotation tells a story not just of the text itself, but of the people behind the ink-stained pages. Copying forbidden texts, risk and rebellion. The monastery was a place of order, faith, and obedience. But beneath its serene walls, some monks dared to tread dangerous ground. Copying forbidden texts was a risky act of rebellion, a quiet resistance against censorship and dogma. Forbidden texts ranged from heretical treatises to banned scientific works, pagan philosophies, or even banned poetry. Possession of these manuscripts could lead to severe punishment, including excommunication, imprisonment, or worse. Yet, driven by curiosity, conviction, or secret alliances, some scribes risked copying these dangerous works. Their labor was clandestine pages, hidden beneath layers, texts written in code, or bound within seemingly innocuous volumes. The act of copying was itself an act of defiance, a statement that knowledge could not be contained by the walls of the monastery or the decrees of the powerful. Monks who engaged in this work lived in fear of discovery but were fueled by a passion to preserve ideas. Deemed too dangerous for the common eye, secret networks formed, monks communicating through hidden notes, exchanging manuscripts, and passing forbidden knowledge under the cover of night. This underground scholarship became a lifeline for dissident thought in an era of strict orthodoxy. The risks were real and immediate. In some cases, entire scriptoria were searched and manuscripts burned. Monks caught with forbidden texts faced harsh interrogations, public shaming, and exile. Yet the act of copying forbidden texts planted seeds of change, preserving knowledge that would later fuel the Renaissance and scientific revolution. The monk who copied the world did more than preserve scripture. Sometimes he preserved the sparks of rebellion. The quill drops, blindness, piety, and the final page, decades of painstaking work took their toll on the monk's body, especially his eyes. Hours spent squinting in dim light, focusing on tiny script and delicate illuminations. led many scribes into blindness or severe vision impairment by their later years. This loss was often seen as a badge of honor, a sign of piety and sacrifice. Monks who could no longer copy manuscripts were revered for their dedication, their fading sight a testament to their spiritual devotion. The quill, once the tool of creation and power, eventually slipped from trembling fingers. Some monks spent their final days dictating text to younger scribes, passing the torch to a new generation while their own vision waned. Despite physical decline, faith remained unshaken. The act of copying was not just labor. It was prayer, meditation, and an offering to God. Each page turned was a step closer to eternity, a silent hymn in ink. Monks died surrounded by the texts they had preserved and created, volumes thick with centuries of knowledge and human imperfection. Their work shaped the intellectual foundation of future centuries, a legacy often hidden in plain sight. The final page, carefully inscribed, marks the end of a journey, a life spent in quiet devotion, where ink met parchment in a delicate dance of mortality and meaning. As the quill drops for the last time, the monk's silent vigil concludes. But the world they copied lives unetched in ink, illuminated by faith, and preserved through the ages. Blood and hot water, the bathhouse attendant's secrets heating the stones before dawn, before the first patrons arrive. Long before dawn breaks, the bathhouse attendant begins his unseen labor. The air is thick with anticipation and the scent of wet stone and smoldering firewood. Stoking the fires beneath the massive stone vats, he carefully manages the heat that will turn cold, dank rooms into steamy sanctuaries. The stones lining the bathhouse floors and walls retain the day's heat and the night's chill alike. They are slowly warmed, radiating comfort that seeps into every corner of the space. This process demands attention and endurance, a delicate balance between too cold and scalding. As the glow from the fires flickers against the damp walls, the attendant moves silently through the empty chambers, preparing tools and ensuring the cleanliness of the communal spaces. The chill in the air is gradually replaced by rising steam, promising warmth for the day ahead. This prelude to the bathhouse's daily bustle is a quiet moment, an intimate dance of fire, stone, and water that few ever witness. The attendant's work sets the stage for the complex social and bodily rituals to come. Each dawn's heat is a vital offering, transforming the cold, rough stones into a space where bodies will be washed, secrets exchanged, and politics played out beneath the haze of steam. Naked guests, private deals, the bathhouse fills quickly as the morning progresses. Men and women shedding layers of cloth and inhibition, stepping into the warm embrace of steaming waters and heated stone. Naked bodies mingle in pools and steam rooms, creating a sensory tapestry of damp skin, whispered voices, and the faint scent of herbs and smoke. Behind the veil of mist, the bathhouse becomes a crossroads of social exchange. Nobles, merchants, laborers, and servants alike meet in these steamy chambers, not just to cleanse, but to barter, scheme, and cement alliances. Private deals are struck amid the echo of dripping water and the soft sighs of relaxation. Whispers of land sales, arranged marriages, and political favors slip through the haze carried between steam clouds and shifting shadows. The attendant, though often unseen, is keenly aware of these exchanges. His eyes miss little observing who arrives together, who lingers too long, and who slips away with hurried footsteps. He becomes an unwitting confidant and, sometimes, a gatekeeper of secrets. This intimate environment blurs lines between vulnerability and power. Nudity strips away outward status, leaving only whispered words and gestures to reveal true intentions. The bathhouse is both sanctuary and stage for the complex dramas of medieval life. In this heated, humid space, the attendant navigates a world of exposed bodies and hidden agendas, balancing discretion with survival. Boils, bleeds, and body scraping, the warm steam and communal waters of the bathhouse might seem soothing, but beneath the surface lurked a harsher reality. Boils, festering wounds, and skin infections were common companions for patrons, especially in crowded, humid spaces where disease could spread like wildfire. The bathhouse attendant was often called upon to assist in dealing with these ailments, applying poultices made from herbs, scraping away dead skin with rough scrapers, or sometimes helping to drain painful abscesses. His role was equal parts caretaker and grim reaper, navigating the thin line between healing and harm. Body scraping was a brutal, noisy ritual. Using tools like the strigil, a curved metal scraper, the attendant would rub away sweat, dirt, and dead skin in harsh strokes. This was a cleansing method thought to refresh the body and stimulate circulation, but it often left raw, bleeding patches that needed tending. Bloodletting. Another common practice might also be performed or facilitated in the bathhouse. Drawing blood was believed to balance humors and purge toxins, but the process was painful and risky, especially in communal settings rife with infection. Despite these dangers, patrons returned day after day, seeking relief from aches, fatigue, and the grime of medieval life. The bathhouse was both physical cleansing and social respite, even if it came with its share of pain and risk. The attendant's knowledge of skin ailments, herbal remedies, and hygiene rituals made him an indispensable figure, though often one whose work was shrouded in discomfort and necessity. Whispers through steam. Politics and pimps behind the thick. Swirling steam of the bathhouse, an invisible web of politics and power thrived. The bathhouse was more than a place of cleansing. It was a social nexus where alliances were forged, favors brokered, and reputations made or broken. Nobles and merchants exchanged guarded words while muscles relaxed in the hot waters. Schemes whispered beneath the rising mist could influence trade deals or sway local governance. The bathhouse attendant, though mostly silent, was ever watchful, his eyes sharp, noting the alliances formed in the haze. But the bathhouse's secrets extended beyond politics. It was a known haunt for pimps and courtesans, who used the privacy of esteem to find clients and negotiate terms. Prostitution thrived in these humid chambers, a shadow economy running parallel to the official social order. Attendants sometimes acted as middlemen or protectors, earning a cut from illicit deals or turning a blind eye in exchange for coin. Their position was precarious, caught between maintaining order and exploiting the opportunities the bathhouse's atmosphere created. Whispers of scandal and seduction floated through the air, mingling with the scent of herbs and smoke. The bathhouse was a stage for human desires and ambitions, where appearances dissolved in the haze, revealing the raw, sometimes ugly truths beneath. Navigating this world required discretion and savvy. The attendant's role extended beyond heating stones and scrubbing skin. He was a keeper of secrets, an unwitting participant in the politics and passions that simmered beneath the surface. Cleaning what can't be washed away as the last patrons slip out, leaving behind a haze of steam and softened skin. The bathhouse attendant is left with a different kind of burden, the residue that no soap or water can cleanse. The bathhouse may wash away dirt and sweat, but it cannot scrub away the invisible stains of fear, shame, and longing etched into the souls of those who pass through. Behind the warmth and social ritual lies a darker truth, the weight of secrets carried silently beneath the surface. Stories of lost loved ones, broken promises, and hidden betrayals linger in the mist, palpable yet unseen. The attendant, despite his lowly station, becomes a silent witness to human frailty, overhearing whispered confessions, catching furtive glances exchanged in shadowed corners, and sensing the unspoken burdens carried by each guest. Some patrons arrive seeking relief from physical ailments, but many come bearing emotional wounds, loneliness, regret, and the quiet desperation of lives marked by hardship. The bathhouse offers a fleeting sanctuary, a temporary escape from the grime of the world outside, but its waters cannot cleanse the soul. In the solitude that follows the day's clamor, the attendant contemplates these unseen stains, aware that his role encompasses more than heating stones or scrubbing skin. He tends to a deeper human need, one that transcends hygiene, a need for connection, privacy, and fleeting solace. As the fires die down and the stones cool, the bathhouse rests, a vessel of stories both told and untold. a place where bodies are cleansed but hearts carry their burdens onward. Of pins and pain, the seamstress who fit the unfit tiny rooms. Bent spines and candlelight, the seamstress's workshop was a cramped, flickering sanctuary lit only by the wavering glow of candles. Small as it was, the room held an air thick with tension-bent spines hunched over tiny frames. Fingers nimble yet worn, as fabric whispered beneath the needle. The weight of countless garments hung in shadows, each one a testament to the relentless demands of fashion, survival, and social standing. Amid the cramped quarters, the seamstress balanced precision and endurance, often working late into the night, guided only by candlelight and the ticking clock of deadlines. Her workbench bore the marks of years-scattered pins, threads unraveled, and scraps of cloth that told silent stories of wear and tear. This was no mere craft. It was a demanding physical ritual where the weight of the world pressed down through every stitch, every pull of the needle. The seamstress bent to her work, contorting to fit the impossible shapes and sizes dictated by the era's fashions and the fragile bodies she clothed. Despite the small space and dim light, the workshop was alive with the quiet symphony of needles clicking, scissors snipping, and the soft rustle of fabric. Here, the seamstress wove the fabric not only of clothes, but of social identity, shaping how her clients presented themselves to the world. Yet, beneath the quiet artistry lay pain and sacrifice. Bending over such delicate work took a toll ache deep in the spine. Eyes strained from flickering flames, and fingers pricked raw by relentless pins. Bleeding fingers and corset bones, behind the elegance of Tudor and medieval fashion, lurked a cruel truth. Garments were weapons, shaping bodies often at the cost of pain and damage. The seamstress's fingers bled frequently, pierced by sharp pins and needles that slipped in the dim candlelight of cramped workshops. Every prick was a reminder of the cost of beauty and survival in a world where appearances were currency. Corsets and stays, staples of the era's silhouette, were masterpieces of cruelty. Rigid bones, often whalebone or hardened wood, pressed tight against flesh and ribs, forcing bodies into unnatural shapes. Breathing was restricted, movements limited, and the threat of broken ribs loomed for those who dared to conform. The seamstress bore witness to the physical toll on her clients. She measured and fitted not just clothing, but pain, knowing the faint moans behind closed doors, the whispered complaints of bruised ribs, and the constant struggle between fashion and flesh. Her work demanded both precision and empathy. Stitching a corset was a delicate balance between creating the desired silhouette and avoiding injury, an almost impossible task when clients demanded tighter fits or cheaper materials. Yet, despite the agony, fashion was survival. Clothing marked status, protected identity, and even secured favor in courts and markets. The seamstress was both creator and enabler of this painful social ritual. Hands raw and eyes strained, she pushed through long hours, crafting garments that both trapped and empowered their wearers. Her labor was unseen but vital, a quiet sacrifice woven into every seam. Dressing the dead and the mad, the seamstress's work extended beyond the living into the shadowy realm of dressing the dead and those deemed mad by society. Clothing the deceased was a delicate, solemn task. Garments had to honor the dead while preparing them for burial, often using the same painstaking techniques reserved for the living. Funeral clothes were sometimes the last gift a family could afford, a final act of dignity and respect. The seamstress's fingers worked carefully, stitching shrouds or dressing bodies in their finest attire, preserving appearance against the finality of death. Equally grim was the task of clothing those confined to asylums or kept hidden away for their madness. These garments were often utilitarian, designed to restrict movement or discourage escape, made from coarse materials with little regard for comfort. Yet, even in these bleak conditions, the seamstress's skill was required to tailor clothes that fit bodies distorted by illness or confinement. Every stitch was a reminder of society's margins, the forgotten, the feared, and the misunderstood. Dressing the dead and the mad brought the seamstress face to face with mortality and the fragility of human dignity. Her work was a bridge between life and death, sanity and madness, the seen and the unseen. In these moments, the sewing needle became a tool of compassion, binding not just fabric but the frayed edges of human existence. Embroidery, superstition, and secret messages beneath the delicate stitches and ornate patterns of embroidered garments lay layers of meaning symbols. Superstitions and secret messages woven into thread. For the seamstress, embroidery was more than decoration. It was a language, a way to communicate quietly in a world rife with suspicion and superstition. Patterns might invoke protection against evil spirits, a stitched pentagram hidden in a collar, a series of crosses along a hem, or tiny knots said to trap malevolent forces. Clients often requested these symbols in secret, trusting the seamstress to shield them from harm. In times when spoken words could lead to accusations of witchcraft or heresy, embroidery became a safer outlet for expression. Hidden initials, coded motifs, or subtle political statements were sewn into garments worn under the watchful eyes of church and crown. Superstition extended to the tools themselves. Some seamstresses believed that certain needles or threads carried luck or curses passing down heirloom. Needles believed to ward off misfortune or avoiding threads dyed with unlucky colors. These secret messages were a silent rebellion, a way to preserve personal identity and defy the rigid social order. A stitched heart could signal a lover's allegiance, a hidden motto, a claim to power or heritage. The seamstress's hands moved with both artistry and caution, weaving these symbols into fabric like a whispered conversation beneath the surface of society. Every stitch carried weight, every pattern a story waiting to be read by those who knew how to look. Paid in cloth. The currency of thread money was scarce in the medieval and Tudor world, but the seamstress's labor held value that went far beyond coin. Payment was often made in cloth, thread, or barter, every scrap of fabric a tangible sign of worth in a barter economy where coin was tight and trust was currency. Clients arrived bearing bolts of cloth as payment, a roll of expensive velvet or humble wool, a promise of future favor or protection. These materials were both the tools and the rewards of the seamstress's trade, fueling her craft and livelihood. Debt was a constant companion. Seamstresses often extended credit to trusted clients, stitching now and hoping for payment later. This trust came with risk. Unpaid debts meant lost resources and grueling labor without reward. In some cases, debts were repaid not in coin or cloth, but favor services, information, or protection. The seamstress's network extended beyond fabric, weaving into the social and economic fabric of the community. The value of cloth also marked social boundaries. Fine silks and intricate embroidery distinguished nobility from commoners, while the seamstress's skill made those distinctions visible. Her work was essential in reinforcing and sometimes subverting the rigid hierarchies of the time. Through all this, the seamstress endured, her fingers raw, her spine bent, her patience tested. But her craft sustained families, shaped identities, and stitched together the fragile tapestry of medieval life. Sleeping with one eye open, the watchman of medieval city, the bell toll at sundown. As the sun dips below the city's stone walls, the ancient bell tolls a somber call to arms. The watchman, heavy cloak pulled tight against the night's chill, begins his vigil. This is no time for rest, just the beginning of long hours spent guarding narrow alleys, flickering lanterns, and the fragile peace of the sleeping city. The bell's echo weaves through cobblestone streets, signaling the city's transition from bustling day to shadowed night. Doors lock, shutters close, and an uneasy silence settles, pierced only by the distant howl of a stray dog or the occasional clang of a closing gate. For the watchman, this bell marks more than the hour. It is the heartbeat of the city's fragile order. Each toll reminds him of the dangers lurking in darkness, thieves eager for easy prey, drunks stumbling home, and rats scurrying in the shadows. His duties are clear but unending: patrol the streets, sound alarms, and uphold the curfew. Yet beneath the routine lies a vigilant mind, constantly scanning the gloom for signs of unrest, fire, or worse. The watchman's post is both a position of authority and isolation, a lonely sentinel perched between the waking world and the city's nightmares. His night has just begun. Shadows in the alley, thieves, rats, and drunks. The narrow alleys of the medieval city twist and curl like veins, dark and treacherous, alive with unseen movement. Under the dim glow of flickering lanterns, the watchman's footsteps echo softly on cobblestones, slick with evening mist. These alleys are a sanctuary for the city's unwanted, thieves hunting easy marks, rats scurrying in the rubbish, and drunks weaving dangerously close to the edge of violence or misfortune. Each shadow holds a potential threat or a secret eyes darting just beyond sight. The rustle of stolen goods being stashed, the sharp hiss of whispered plans. The watchman's gaze is sharp, honed through countless nights of quiet observation and sudden chaos. He knows every twist, every crumbling wall, and every hidden doorway that might conceal trouble. His presence is both deterrent and challenge. Some criminals melt away at the sight of his lantern. Others test his patience and nerve, emboldened by alcohol or desperation. Rats, the ever-present city companions, skitter noisily through heaps of refuse. Their relentless, gnawing, and sudden skittering movements often startle even the most seasoned watchmen, reminding him that the city's filth breeds life as well as danger. Despite his vigilance, the watchman is often powerless to stop the small crimes or drunken brawls that flare and fade like shadows themselves. He carries the weight of responsibility with little thanks, his duty to keep the peace a lonely, thankless task. The night wears on, each step deepening his understanding of the city's darker pulse, a rhythm of survival, desperation, and human frailty wrapped in the cloak of darkness. The curfew breakers and the crying widow as the city's curfew bell rings out, signaling the time when all must be indoors. The watchman's vigilance sharpens. Yet, inevitably, some souls defy the ordered curfew breakers who risk punishment, or worse, simply because their lives don't fit the rhythm of law and order. The alleyways hold stories of desperation, a young man sneaking out to meet a forbidden lover, a merchant retrieving stolen goods, or a desperate thief driven by hunger rather than greed. Each curfew breaker embodies a story that the watchman knows well, but rarely speaks of. A fragile human thread tangled in the city's harsh fabric. One night, the watchman's rounds bring him to a quiet, dimly lit courtyard where the soft sound of weeping pierces the night. There, a widow mourns her lost husband, whose life was claimed by the city's ceaseless struggles. Her sobs are raw and haunting, a stark contrast to the cold stone and darkened streets. The watchman stands a respectful distance, away no role for him to intervene here, only to witness the grief that shadows the city's every corner. He is both guardian and bystander, caught between enforcing rules and acknowledging the human cost beneath. Curfew enforcement is not always about crime, it's about control, safety, and sometimes cruelty. The watchman faces moral dilemmas when punishing those whose offenses stem from survival, loss, or love. Through the cries and the quiet defiance, the watchman's lonely duty reveals the complex. Fragile humanity threading through the medieval city's night. Fog, footsteps, and false alarms, a dense fog curls through the crooked streets, swallowing lantern light and turning familiar alleys into ghostly mazes. The watchman's breath puffs like smoke in the chill air, every sound amplified, the scrape of a boot, the snap of a twig, the distant clatter of a falling cot. In this murky haze, every noise sharpens the watchman's senses. His hand tightens on the lantern's handle, heart quickening as footsteps echo behind walls or around corners. Is it a friend? A foe? Or merely the restless night stirring its restless spirits? False alarms are as frequent as actual threats. A stray cat's yowl sends him sprinting down a narrow passage. A drunken stumble sparks a wary call. Shadows dancing in torchlight become imagined figures in the mind's eye. Yet, even the false alarms are heavy with tension. Each moment demands vigilance, testing the watchman's patience and nerves. The night stretches endlessly, an unforgiving test of endurance and perception. The fog itself seems a living thing, an unpredictable cloak that can conceal danger or provide cover for mischief. The watchman moves cautiously, knowing a single misstep could mean disaster for himself or the city. Loneliness creeps in between each echo and shadow. The silence between alarms is filled with a quiet dread. the kind that settles deep in the bones after hours spent alone in the dark. This nightly dance of tension and release shapes the watchman's world. Relentless vigil where fear and fatigue entwine beneath the city's shrouded veil. Dawn, relief, and the quiet toll of loneliness as the first pale fingers of dawn stretch over the city's stone rooftops. The watchman feels a slow, aching relief wash over him. The bell tolls once more, marking the end of his long vigil and the return of a fragile peace to the streets. Night's shadows retreat with the light, dissolving the fog and silencing the ghosts that haunted dark alleys. The watchman's tired eyes scan the waking city, still scarred by the night's struggles, but safe. For now. His body aches with the weight of hours spent standing, walking, watching, muscles stiff, bones weary. Yet there is a quiet pride in knowing his presence warded off chaos, kept the city's fragile order intact through the darkest hours. But relief is mingled with a profound loneliness. The watchman's work is solitary, his comrades few, and the gratitude of those he protects often unspoken or absent. He carries the burden of unseen vigilance, bearing witness to the city's secrets and sorrows in silence. As the city stirs to life, the watchman's day fades into obscurity. He steps down from his post, returning to a home where rest is brief and the cycle will begin anew come sundown. His was a life lived on the edge, always alert, always ready, yet forever apart. In the quiet dawn, the watchman embodies the city's hidden strength and silent sacrifice. Quiet echoes of the mundane tonight. We've walked the shadowed paths of lives rarely remembered, those who lived in the margins, whose stories were written not in grand battles or royal decrees, but in the daily rhythms of survival, sweat, and quiet endurance. From the heavy steps of the plague doctor cloaked in his beaked suit, through the smoky halls of alchemy class steeped in secrets and strange smells, to the grave digger's midnight toil beneath a pale lantern. We've glimpsed worlds that history often leaves unspoken. We've followed the gong farmer down into cesspits that carried the city's refuse and shame, and sat in the queen's chambers with the louse collector, whose work was both reviled and vital. We've tasted the burning bread and felt the aching bones of the medieval baker, traced the flickering candlelight of the monk copying worlds by hand, and lingered in the steamy bathhouse where bodies and secrets were laid bare. The seamstress bent over needle and thread, stitching pain and superstition into fabric, while the watchman walked his lonely rounds, guarding a city that barely noticed him. Each story, each life, is a quiet echo, a whisper beneath the roaring headlines of history. These mundane moments reveal the unvarnished truths of humanity, resilience in the face of hardship, the mingling of dignity and grime, and the fragile threads that bind us across time. So, as you drift toward rest, remember that history is not only the triumphs and conquests, but the slow, grinding march of ordinary lives, complex, messy, and endlessly human. Thank you for spending this evening with me. We're stepping quietly into these forgotten worlds. If you found a sliver of peace in these tales, consider liking the video, subscribing, and sharing where you're listening from. I love knowing who's out there, drifting softly through the slow march of history. Until next time, dim the lights, settle in, and let the whispers of the past carry you gently into sleep. Good night.